Well, the aviation sector has gone through a difficult period post the COVID-19 pandemic. It is now on the feet of recovery. Joining us to talk about Boeing's plans, not just for India, but for the international business, is the head of Boeing's international business, Brendan Nelson. Brendan, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Let me start by asking you about the outlook for the aviation sector globally. As I pointed out, it's been a difficult 3 years for the aviation sector. How are we out of the woods yet? How strong do you anticipate the recovery is likely to be from here on?
Well, thank you for speaking to me, Shireen. It's a privilege to do so. I think in terms of context, firstly, something I didn't realise until I came to Boeing is that 80% of humanity has not yet flown, has not yet been on a plane. And when you look at the long-term future, providing we get to sustainable aviation, which is a priority for our company, the growth is enormous. We've been through this perfect storm, if you like, in terms of the aviation sector with the global pandemic and the devastating impact that it's had on the industry, but growth has rebounded extremely quickly. And in fact, in all of the markets, we are close to, if not in some cases exceeded pre-COVID-19 levels of air travel, domestically certainly, and international aviation is running at about 80% of what it was pre-COVID. You've seen what's happened in China. President Xi has changed the approach to COVID-19, and we've seen a very rapid increase in demand for domestic aviation in China, and it's anticipated that China will get to 65, perhaps even 80% of pre-COVID by the end of 2023. So it's very much on the way back. And particularly for India, we're forecasting that over the next 20 years that India will need about 2,200 more aircraft for its commercial fleet, and that's a conservative estimate. So the growth is very significant.
Well, yes, we are seeing a rebound across different markets, especially when we talk about passenger traffic. But what does that mean as far as the order book is concerned, specifically for Boeing? And more importantly, in terms of the challenges that OEMs like yours have faced on account of supply chain disruptions, how much of that is now a thing of the past?
Well, certainly we face challenges, and for Boeing last year we had 800 orders, and we'll be working hard to support our customers throughout the world, including in India. Many of them are going through fleet renewals as a way of increasing their sustainability, reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, modernising fleets, and a much more efficient operations. We clearly face supply chain constraints at the moment, as do many industries. And we've been working hard to have our teams that are actually working with our suppliers. We're looking at bringing new suppliers that we may not have used in the past into our supply chains. We're also very focused on what we call our safety inventory, the amount of inventory that we have as a reserve, and building up those reserves, and essentially doing everything that we can to keep our supply chains going. One of the things that's really important is that we make sure that our production rates are able to be supplied confidently by the supply chains, to make sure that we get production right, that we deliver what we promise to deliver, and when we say that we will do it. And we're confident that we'll be able to meet the expectations of our customers in the near term. The supply chain issues will continue to challenge the industry at least for the next 1, perhaps 2 years.
If I could specifically focus on the supply chain constraints that you just alluded to, and you said that you anticipate this is likely to continue for at least another 12 to 24 months. Where do you see the most pain at this point in time? Is it on the engine side? You also spoke about the fact that you are likely to onboard new suppliers. Now, India has been a part of the Boeing ecosystem as far as the supply base is concerned. How significant a role is India likely to play in trying to ensure that you move past these supply chain disruptions?
Well, there are a range of things that are in constrained supply at the moment, and engine manufacturers are challenged in meeting the demands of the aircraft manufacturers, including us, electrical components and of course computer chips. But nonetheless, we're managing our supply chain issues I think very effectively. India is extraordinarily important. India, of course, is an emerging superpower. It's a vibrant democracy. It is now the most populous country in the world. We, Boeing, have 5,000 Indians employed by Boeing in India. We've got 300 suppliers in our supply chain in India at the moment. We invest $1 billion US a year with those suppliers, and that has a multiplier effect of supporting around 14,000 Indians. In looking at furthering our supply chains, you're absolutely right, Shireen. We're very focused on India, and you'll see in the near and medium term we'll be making further announcements about our suppliers who come from India supporting our international supply chain. We've currently got 2,200 international suppliers in 58 countries, and India is very much a growth priority for Boeing and will receive further investment from our company in a number of areas in supporting not just commercial aviation but also the defence sector, and we'll be supporting manufacturing and also skills growth. And I should have said earlier, by the way, Shireen, that in terms of growing the aviation sector in India, that 2,200 planes or thereabouts, that'll require about 100,000 Indians, pilots, crews, engineers, technicians, mechanics, a whole range of people, and we'll be investing also in skilling up the Indian population to support aviation growth in this country.
If I could just pick up on the investment that you just spoke of, and you said you're already invested $1 billion in India across the supplier ecosystem, and you anticipate that growth is only going to pick up from here on. What would that mean, if you could quantify what it would mean over the next few years in terms of additional incremental investments into India? And specifically on onboarding new suppliers, are there conversations that are already underway? When do you believe we could expect more suppliers to be onboarded here in India? And for what specifically?
Well, there's not a lot specifically that I'm able to announce to you at the moment. We will be making some announcements at Aero India about our further footprint. We'll also be making some further announcements following some commercial negotiations that we have been involved with, and we'll make further announcement about expansion of the supply chain once our teams have completed consultations and reviews in India itself. But I can only reassure you that our workforce in India, our direct workforce, is certainly going to grow from its current 5,000, and our suppliers will be increasing from the 300 that it currently is.
Let's talk about the commercial side before I get to the defence opportunity here in India. And there's, of course, been a lot of talk around the likely order that's going to come in from Air India. I know that these are sensitive conversations and negotiations that are currently underway, but do share with us what you can in terms of how you expect things to proceed, especially as far as Air India is concerned.
Well, at this stage, Shireen, there's not a lot that I'm able to say about the detail of Air India. We work very closely with all of our customers, including Air India. I would say to you, though, that the Tata Group acquiring Air India is good for the Tata Group, it's good for Air India, but most importantly, it's good for the nation of India itself. The Tata Group has a track record of ethical performance, of delivering outcomes for India, and their ownership of Air India is good for the nation. We will work very closely with Air India and all of the carriers across India to support them and to provide them with whatever they need from the Boeing company. At this stage, I can't say much more than that.
I understand, but you know, you talked about 2,200 planes in India, and that's the kind of headroom for growth that you anticipate over the next 2 decades. How much of that does Boeing want to corner in India? What's the aspiration that you have at this point in time?
Well, obviously, as you would expect, Shireen, we would like to provide as many aircraft as is possible and considered necessary by Indian carriers. Those decisions are entirely in the hands of the Indian aircraft industry and our customers, but we have an extraordinarily impressive range of commercial aircraft which we offer and support. And if you are an airline and you're going to a long-term relationship with a company, Boeing is a company that will certainly support and deliver and maintain aircraft in a way that our customers expect. The availability of the aircraft is outstanding, and we expect to have a significant slice of that growing market. And that's one of the reasons why we're increasing our investment in India and employing Indians. We believe in India and we want to support it in every way that we possibly can.
Let me move away from the commercial opportunity to the defence side of the opportunity. And of course, the Indian government has been focused on self-reliance through the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, and that is the attempt to try and get more manufacturing done here in India. Of course, at the DEF Expo, we've seen Boeing articulate its plans for India. But if you can give us an update on where things currently stand as far as the defence aspiration is concerned and future investments here as well.
Well, we support Prime Minister Modi's vision for India, made in India, for India and for the world. And at this stage, as I'm speaking to you, there are 154 Boeing commercial aircraft in operation, but we've delivered 22 Apache helicopters to India, 15 Chinook helicopters, 12 P-8 Poseidon aircraft and 11 C-17s. And also 777s and 737s for the VIP fleet. Those platforms require sustainment and support, and we've invested in support of those. We also have other platforms which we have offered and are offering to the Indian government, including our Block 3 Super Hornets, and we have autonomous vehicles and aircraft and some weapon systems which we will also be offering to the Indian government. I mean, you've got the third largest defence force in the world, and quite rightly the decisions that are made by India are entirely a matter for India itself, but we're confident in what we've got to offer. The joint venture that we have with the Tata Group at Hyderabad is an example of what I think the future is going to be, with Boeing co-investing with Indian companies in the development of products for India and, as I say, for the rest of the world. So we have built nearly 200 Apache helicopter fuselages in Hyderabad. In fact, the first one was delivered in January to the Indian Army, or has been produced for the Indian Army, which is an illustrator of what we're doing. We invested $100 million US in developing the technology necessary there to build vertical fins for 737s, and we're doing nose cones and tail cones for Chinook helicopters. We're doing tail cones for P-8s. This is the kind of co-investment that's important for not just us and our business strategy, but also for India itself, and that's a win-win. And in fact, I should also say, of course, that we've spent $200 million US on a 43-acre site to develop the Boeing India Engineering and Technology Centre, which is an extraordinary capability that will house some 4,000 Indian engineers. So we're very pleased.
You know, just on the defence side, because you spoke about that joint venture that you have with the Tatas, but at the Defence Expo, Boeing had also spoken about the need to focus much more on localization and, in turn, further partnerships here in India. Is there anything on the anvil by way of more partnerships, more joint ventures here on the defence side in India? And about the export opportunity that you spoke of, one, of course, is catering to domestic demand, but the export opportunity of making in India for the world. What are the targets that you have in mind?
Well, we will be and are exploring further opportunities for co-development in India that meet the needs of India and of Boeing. I can't be too specific about them at the moment for reasons I hope you would appreciate. We currently have about $1 billion in exports from India that we have produced here, and we anticipate that that is going to grow. It's going to grow firstly because as a company we believe in India and supporting India itself. We also know that that's an important part of the decision-making process the Indian government quite rightly makes when it's making decisions about procurement, what it's going to buy. And we also know that as a consequence of the geopolitical tensions that we have in the world, that nations are increasing their investment in defence, which means that us and companies like us that produce and provide defence platforms and services, that we will be selling more of them to these countries, and that means that more will be of what we do make in India is going to be exported to the rest of the world. So in that sense, that's a good story for India and a good story for Boeing.
You talked about how Boeing intends to focus much more emphatically on sustainable aviation, and that's what I wanted to pick up on. What do you expect we can see in terms of fresh developments over the next few years on that front? Given the current global economic context, specifically high inflation, high oil prices, and all of that impacts, of course, the growth of the sector. So, on sustainability linked to the changes and the headwinds that we're seeing as far as the economic climate is concerned, what can we expect?
Well, what's extraordinarily important, Shireen, is that all of us, it doesn't matter what you do, where you live, what industry you're in, we have to cater for the needs of our generation whilst protecting the capacity of the next and subsequent generations to cater for theirs. We have to be sustainable. Aviation is 2.6% of global greenhouse gas emissions, about 12% of that in the transport sector. So for Boeing, at every part of what we do, in our manufacturing plants, our assembly facilities, the management of waste, water, energy, recycling, all of those things to reduce our footprint to zero, and our ambition is to get to net zero in aviation by 2050. So what you're seeing at the moment is, and I mentioned earlier, fleet renewals by airline carriers, because the quickest way to reduce your greenhouse gas footprint is to purchase new aircraft. So a 737 MAX 8, for example, will reduce your footprint by about 25%, a 787 by about 20%. And then sustainable aviation fuels is certainly in the near, medium and long term, for long haul especially, is the solution for decarbonising. So we're investing very heavily in various parts of various facilities around the world and partnering with other companies in the development of and production of sustainable aviation fuels, or SAF as it is called. In the near term, that is the quickest way, apart from fleet renewal, to get to zero emissions. And we're also working on electrification, which will certainly come in the near term for smaller aircraft on shorter flights, turboprops, and of course we're working on hydrogen, but hydrogen is not going to be the solution for commercial aviation in the near or medium term. In fact, The Economist last year described hydrogen for medium and long haul flights as a techno fantasy for the next few decades. But we're working on all three of those ways of decarbonising aviation, as well as the complete life cycle of aircraft themselves. So it informs everything that we do, and we have an immense responsibility to decarbonise as quickly as we can. Our ambition is to be at net zero by 2050. That's the commitment of the entire aviation industry, and certainly of Boeing.
Mr. Nelson, let me end by asking you about what we can expect as far as 2023 goes for Boeing. 2022 was a turnaround year of sorts, given the difficulties of the past, especially with the 737 MAX. What should we expect this year, specifically as far as certification is concerned of some of the newer variants?
Well, the decision to the certification of the aircraft, the 737-7, the 737-10 and other platforms is entirely a matter for the regulators themselves. We're working very closely with the regulators in getting the aircraft certified as soon as they safely and practicably and confidently can. I'd also say on the financial front, for those who follow our financial performance, last year we were back to $66.6 billion in revenue and free cash flow of $3.1 billion. We advised our investor conference in November last year that we expect in 2025, 2026 to have about $100 billion in revenue and an operating margin of about 10% and $10 billion in free cash flow. As I said earlier, we had 800 orders last year. We are very confident that we're very much on the right track and we have significant growth ahead of us. But we still have, we know that we still have a lot of hard work to do, and we're making sure that we earn the confidence of our customers and the travelling public.
Ben Nelson, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18 and taking us through Boeing's plans for India specifically. We look forward to seeing you back here soon, but thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Shireen, and I will be back.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up the CNBC-TV18 special. We'll take a quick break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a minute with more.